I know you must be pretty busy, and I was just quite interested about getting you to talk about a few things. And I saw your background, and you got a Bachelor of Science in Biochem and PhD in is it molecular mechanisms? Is it?
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, not the easiest kind of things to study.
No.
And I think when I kind of set you some of the questions, I thought it'd be cool to get your take on it, because you know the ins and outs of the body probably a lot more than your average coach, personal trainer. And I think a lot of people tend to slag a lot of these things off without maybe knowing the ins and outs, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much time you have, but we'll just kind of have a bit of fun with it.
Oh yeah, we'll just have a bit of fun. I'm not doing anything, and I've got to ring somebody after 5 o'clock. But I said, I'm doing something before then, and I don't know exactly when I'll finish.
Yeah, don't worry. I won't keep you that long. So
Oh no, it's fine. I won't waffle, but then I don't want to feel like I'm cutting you short or anything. But you can still be yourself in it, because I have listened to your other podcasts.
Yeah.
Chip in whenever you want.
Yeah, no, defo. One of my friends told me the other day, actually, he's like, you need to stop saying yeah or cool and stuff. Like, just let people talk. He's like, I know you want them to know you're listening. He's like, just shut up. And I was like, all right, that's fine. So yeah, don't worry. I'll let you go off. So first off, Sara Pugh, right? You said?
Yes.
Perfect. Yes. Welcome to the Fitness Burrito Podcast. So it's a different name, but for anybody out there who's never listened to this podcast before, it's all about kind of getting people on that can help you practically apply information regarding training, nutrition, health, and fitness. I'm Dan Kirion, Dan Q. I'm the guy behind the podcast. And I'm pretty excited today because I've got a fairly well-educated guest from her profile. She's got a PhD in molecular mechanisms, a Bachelor of Science in biochemistry and genetics. Is that right? Sara Pugh. So she's actually Leeds based as well. She doesn't live too far from me. So Sara, give the people out there a bit of an intro about yourself. It can be as long, as short as you want. Up to you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Dan, for having me on the burrito. I'm Sara, and as Dan said, I'm a biochemist, but I'm also a Pilates teacher or movement teacher and a hypnotist. And I'll start with the biochemistry. So I've done that probably 20 plus years, and I don't work in a lab anymore, but I did do a lot of lab-based work, and I've worked on things like dopamine receptors, plant genetics and moss, bacteria, not viruses, yeast. My last project was on statins and heart cells, which is quite interesting, and my PhD was on protein folding, which loosely is connected to Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. And nowadays with the biochemistry, I work as a detox biochemist. So that's helping people remove things like mercury, plastics, other heavy metals like arsenic from their bodies, lead, all kinds of other environmental toxins, because they give people unwanted mental effects like depression or anxiety, but also things like chronic fatigue, and they interfere with hormones and they shouldn't be there. I also advise people on supplements of all kinds. There's no barrier. I don't sell anything to anybody or market to them. They come to me with questions or things about what they want to do or what they plan to do, and I'll advise them to the best of my knowledge. So first of all, they don't get ripped off, and secondly, that they're safe. And it's the same with diet and nutrition. It's such a massive minefield that everything works really if you stick to it. So it's just finding the right combination for the person that's going to give them what they want. When it comes to movement, even though I really like doing things like powerlifting, gymnastics, Olympic lifting, that's my hobby. My work, I teach older people how to move better. And it's not just Pilates, it's lots of other things mixed in. And I've done that for about 11 years. I'm also trained in functional neurology. So that's to do with brain and nervous system based training. And that's for anybody from athletes all the way up to people with neurological disease who want to perform better. So when it comes to the nervous system, lots of people don't realize that the inner ear and the eyes massively dictate your posture. And as we know in the fitness industry, form dictates function. And if you're doing massive deadlift slightly out of line, that's asking for like a hip injury or a back injury. Whereas working with the nervous system, you can line up the posture in all kinds of other ways as well. Plus, the nervous system decides how fast you are, how strong you are, when mental fatigue sets in and things like that. So it's got a big broad offering if you want to train the nervous system. And it's something not many people are into that or know about it.
Awesome. So just a few questions really, because that's really fascinating. I think when you started studying, especially I guess for your Bachelor of Science, and then you got into your PhD, like were you doing the hypnotism, the Pilates, and kind of were you big into the fitness kind of stuff before that?
Before I did lots of martial arts and I did some Thai boxing competitions. And for people who are local to Leeds, it was with Golden Team. And I played football for Leeds Uni, and I played squash a lot as well. But no, I wasn't into Pilates at all then, or rehab. And I got the usual thing of getting a bad back and injuries and having to pay somebody to get rid of them. And then working as a scientist, you've got to bend over all the things all the time, work at a computer. So I just got backache and stuff like that, and got really fed up with it and thought, right, I need to learn how to get rid of this myself. And that's how I got into Pilates. When I first did it, I just thought it was the most stupid, weird thing I'd ever done. But it does actually really work. And even though I would never do a Pilates class or yoga class personally, I think it's really useful for preventing injuries and lining yourself up so you can go and do stupid things like 200 kilo deadlifts or backflips or whatever you want to do.
Yeah, it's something I've done a few classes before, and for some reason, I don't know why I don't do more because I really enjoy them. And I think a lot of people don't realize they're quite difficult too. It's
Yeah.
not, I think because I think a lot of people might think about like yoga being very similar and whatnot, but then when you actually do a class, you realize, okay, wow, I just worked out and that was difficult. I'm moving in different ways and different movement patterns. And yeah, I really enjoy it. I think I'm actually doing one this Wednesday.
All right.
You also mentioned golden teams, and it's funny you mentioned that because one of my good friends that he's one of my business partners as well. He works at Golden Teams as well. He trains boxers and stuff. So do you still go there?
No, I'm still a little bit in touch with one of the instructors, but sadly, Big Steve passed away, and I think that was when it wasn't the same without him. So I left, and I'd done martial arts since I was 11, and by then I was nearly 30, and I wanted to do something else.
Yeah. All right. Well, I might get you in touch with Reese afterwards because he's training boxer. He's got a few. He just won a British title recently. He's got an MMA guy in there, so you never know. I might be able to link up. But awesome. And what about the hypnotism? How did you get into that?
Oh, right. Okay. That's about in 2012. I was really interested in stage hypnosis and street hypnosis and close-up magic. So I started off doing all that kind of hypnosis. And like everyone, I did think, oh, this has got to be fake. But when you actually train in it, it is real. And I did all the funny, stupid stuff, first of all, for my and other people's entertainment. And it really made me believe in it. But then I started to mix magic with hypnosis as well. But once I'd got quite good at hypnotizing, I thought I might as well be sensible and use this for therapy. And I have done a few stage hypnosis shows because it is fun to do stuff like that. And it's when we go into hypnosis in a bit more detail later, if you wanted to talk about it in detail, I can highlight what it is. Do you want to talk about hypnosis now or
Yeah, I was gonna say. I know I sent you questions, but we'll just go with the flow, I guess.
we'll
But
just ad
yeah,
lib it. We'll just play it by
yeah,
yeah.
defo. Because I'm just curious to know how like did you have to get certified? Is there like how is that controlled? It's and like how's that applied? I guess.
Right. Okay. So legally, you could put a sign up above your house tomorrow saying hypnotherapist, and you'd be allowed to practice. Whether
Wow.
you'd be any good, I don't know. You never know. But what happens generally is you can go and get trained on courses by people who are either stage hypnotists or therapists. If somebody wanted to learn how to hypnotize people, train with a stage hypnotist or a street hypnotist or a magician, because they'll teach you the whole like sleep thing, pulling someone's arm, lying people on the floor, the whole really dramatic stuff. Whereas the therapy side is more how to use like relaxer therapy more and then help people. So when it comes to actually doing how to hypnotize somebody, a lot of it's based on communicating with the subconscious, which is not the same as the conscious mind. That controls sort of habits and behaviors. Also, a lot of it's to do with rapport. and you get people to follow along with you gradually. You don't just walk up to somebody and go sleep and they just fall on the floor. It's a whole like process. And you sort of build rapport. There's lots of non-verbal signals. You get them to say yes loads of times in a row. It's very similar to sales and advertising. You get somebody really interested, then you get invoke their emotions. Then you start to talk about hypnosis and sleep. And for some reason, something to do with probably a sort of herd dynamics, people seem to just know that when the time comes, when you say sleep, they go into hypnosis. But you can't hypnotize everybody. There are like, I'd probably say it's like a curve. Down here, there's people that are really hypnotizable. The one that'll, be riding a giant chicken, laying a square egg in a hypnosis show. Then there's people in the middle that you can help therapy wise, but they're never going to go in a show. Then you've got people at the other end, which genuinely they can't be hypnotized. And that's just to do with neurology, brain structure. It's nothing to do with intelligence or anything like that. And
so has it ever happened that you tried to hypnotize somebody in a show and just nothing happened?
Oh yeah, loads of times. Because when you're asking how do you learn, basically somebody would show you, well, this is like it's like a ceremony really, and the actual sleep bit comes right at the end. So for example, if you're doing a stage hypnosis show, you do a load of group stuff with people, asking them to say close their eyes, imagine there's a balloon attached to your arm and it's going up and up and up and up and up. And then what you do is in the group, you'll see the people sitting there like that or on their phone. So you ignore them and you carry on and on and on. And gradually in that group that you'll start to see maybe a core of about 20 people all really going along with what you say. You can either say, okay, anybody that wants to be hypnotized or part of the show, please come up. And then usually they will, because they're already sort of half in hypnosis. And if they don't come up, you can always invite them. So in a way, it's pre-selected that you find your sort of 10% of the good people out of the audience. So the bigger the audience, say if it was 1,000-person audience, you've got a really good chance of getting, you only need 5 or 6 good subjects. And street hypnosis would be the same. You'd gather a group of people and do them as a group, and whoever was the best one, you'd choose them. So there is an element of sort of selection. You don't just go up and try and hypnotize random people.
Yeah,
but
and I think a lot of people probably think that's how it works too.
Yeah, the thing is, if you're persistent, because the whole way to learn is you've got to practice and fail a million times and get over looking stupid. Otherwise, you'll never learn. And that's why loads of people train in hypnosis but never go anywhere, because they're too afraid of looking stupid. And you will look stupid, but it's just tough. That's anybody who got anywhere, that happened to them as well. And it's a really good way to actually learn how to hypnotize people. And then the therapy part is sort of separate. Say if you were running a clinic, people come to you already because they've seen hypnosis advertised, somebody's recommended them, they've got a problem they want to solve, so they're already wanting you to hypnotize them. Whereas the people who are out in the street or end up having a picnic, you've just come up to them and said, hey, do you fancy having a totally different day today? They're the hardest ones to do, but the most impressive. And then the show, obviously people have been thinking about the hypnosis show all week. They've paid for a ticket, they've gone. So there's that sort of pre-expectation, and that's really important as well. So there's lots of psychology involved, as well as technique, as well as rapport, as well as you need the right kind of person to hypnotize.
Okay. You just before I guess we go into the therapy side of it, because that's what I was going to ask you a bit more about. You mentioned herd dynamics, and for anybody out there that maybe that flew over their head, what did you mean by that?
Oh, I think I might, it's like swarm mentality. When you've got a crowd of humans, when they're in a big group, they all seem to behave in a different way, like at a football match, that if one person starts running, loads of other people run as well, because they just think they sort of do it automatically. Whereas for some reason, because of whatever, people have been exposed to hypnosis for so long, and they've seen this whole thing, pull and then that. They seem to just do that, even if they've never been hypnotized before. There's some kind of group thing going on that they seem to just know that's what they're supposed to do. And I've never understood that, but it always happens.
Huh, that's crazy. That's pretty interesting though. So I guess if we talked about the therapy side of it, because I think that's really, really interesting. And I think a lot of people listening to this, and I think a lot of people who've probably heard about it before, might kind of be thinking, oh, surely that can't be real, or surely like that doesn't exist, or that doesn't work. But I guess, how long have you been doing it yourself?
Since 2012.
Okay. And what's kind of been some of the results that you've had with it, and what would be like examples of things that have
Oh,
happened to people that maybe people wouldn't even like think about?
oh, I suppose I'm very particular what I like doing. I like doing just phobias, addiction, and then people that want to do performance enhancement.
Hmm.
Say gymnasts who fell off a beam and then they've got a competition next week and they're all nervous. They only do those three things now because, like I said, if somebody is a good hypnotic subject, you could, and they come to therapy, you could have a really good chance of curing whatever it is, being realistic. So for somebody who's interested and has got a problem, it is worth going to see a hypnotist to see if you are a good subject or not. And if you are, then the chances are it should work in very few sessions. And with phobias, usually they start when people are really young, and if something happens and it triggers the phobia. So theoretically, you should be able to get rid of a phobia in one session, because I don't like wasting people's time or money. So phobias, definitely, I've done loads of different phobias, from like clowns and storms and pigeons and the usual things that people acquire over life, because our natural phobias are falling and loud noises. You can't delete those out of a human, but then it's be more irrational fears and phobias.
I hate pigeons too. So yeah, I get it.
Are
I
you,
get why people. Sorry, go
are you
ahead.
afraid that there's like a difference of being wary, because lots of people should be wary of pigeons and snakes and spiders, because they can bite you or poo on you or fly in your face, but whether you're actually go into a complete sort of meltdown if a pigeon appears, that's when it's a problem.
Hmm. Do you find then, just with the hypnosis, you feel like quite powerful at times, or does it feel like you have to have a lot of, I guess, self-control, or do you feel very responsible for what you do? Because in
Yeah,
essence,
yeah, I do.
you can change people's lives, really, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, the thing is, when I was going through the phase of doing the silly hypnosis, I had some people, like, it's easier for some reason to hypnotize the opposite sex, and then I had some men who were just interested in sort of having their own private show, just me and them, and it genuinely wasn't made up. Like, I'd hypnotize them, make them think they were David Beckham, do all this crazy stuff, and think, you know. Say that they've got testicles that are talking and arguing with each other, all kinds of things. And then, like, I'd say, 1 to 3 wide awake, and they'd say, well, when's the hypnosis starting? Genuinely, I thought, wow, I could have made you strip off naked and run around Kirkstall, and then you would never have known you've done that. And that's when I really thought, you have to be really careful with something like this. And there are people who do and would take advantage of it.
Hmm.
But luckily, I think people are not stupid, but every now and again you do get hypnotists doing things they shouldn't, and it is a massive responsibility. That's why when I do therapy, I'd much rather just do phobias, addiction, and performance, because if it doesn't work, all that happens is it didn't work. I haven't messed up anybody's head. I don't want to work with PTSD or trauma or more serious things, because yes, it's a huge responsibility, somebody's vulnerability in their brain, and I'd rather stick to things that either work or they don't. If the person doesn't like it and it didn't work and it was genuinely their fault as well, then they don't get their money back. If I feel that I didn't do it properly, I'll just say, okay, it didn't work, here's your money back, don't worry about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's what I was asking earlier about if it was regulated, and what like the legal kind of ramifications were, if there were any, because by the sounds of it, it's like you said, anybody who really wants to take the time to learn it could really start screwing people over. um
I suppose it's one of these weird things, though, that people luckily seem to have a natural sort of inbuilt protection mechanism generally, that, it's often people who want to do hypnosis for creepy, weird things are generally creepy, weird people anyway, and they're never going to get past the first stage of, like, hello, I'm a hypnotist. Like, people be like, well, I'm off now. It's the very charismatic, friendly people. They're the ones that potentially could be a bit risky, but they're probably, you know, people are not stupid, but yes, something could go wrong, definitely. And
Yeah.
there have been cases I know in the news of hypnotherapists doing things they shouldn't. It's usually men doing things to women. But again, the thing I also don't really approve of is kind of making your clients completely dependent on you. You should empower them with hypnosis to go off and do whatever they want and let them do the rest themselves, rather than saying, oh yeah, you need 10 sessions to get rid of this problem, and make them think they need a therapist to hold their hand for the rest of their life. That's my issue with some of it. And also, some therapists, no disrespect to them, have got loads and loads of issues themselves, and I don't think you should be working with people because you can transfer it and you end up with weird relationships and things like that. But you're completely right, it's a massive responsibility, and it is not very well regulated.
Okay, just last question before we move on, because I think it's really interesting. What kind of athletes do you tend to work more with? Is it more so the gymnastic kind of martial artists, or?
Yeah, it just happens to be gymnasts and dancers. And it's mainly at the moment, younger children who something's happened. They've got potential, so they are going to go somewhere, but something through their confidence, or they can't stop bursting into tears. It's those people I like working with, because I kind of understand dance and gymnastics, and I can have a conversation with them, get the child sort of to like me and be interested and share and stuff like that. But then I suppose with other sports, it would be mainly aiming at when something's gone wrong and they've got that thing holding them back. Say they played a really bad match in football, or the goalie let the ball in and can't get over that really dreadful save. It's more putting that aside and then helping people put that to bed, like a sort of mini trauma, and start again all brand new and move forwards that way. That's the kind of style of hypnosis I like working with, because it's kind of quite simple.
Cool. Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense how that application could actually benefit a lot of people. So that's really good. Appreciate you kind of diving into that. That was nice. So
Also,
I
I
thought
think with you, another thing people always ask about is weight loss and hypnosis. But I think you're asking is can it help, or I don't think anyone can wave a magic wand and someone lose like 3 stone, but it happens. That's the weird thing. But it works really well if somebody's got a diet and exercise plan in place already. The hypnosis is like the icing on top of the cake, because it will help with motivation and emotional issues around food that maybe a personal trainer may not have picked up on, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So would you say then, just on that point, so you've built rapport, you've probably found out a few barriers, obstacles, things they've done in the past, and then you work your magic, and potentially because they already have something in their routine, or
Yeah.
they have structure, it's almost like you said, adding the glue to the rest of it.
Yeah, definitely. And also, as you know, working as a coach, if people usually come to you or me, or because they have a goal, they want to look a certain way or do something. You use hypnosis to future pace them, so they can see how they want to look, feel how they want to feel, maybe win that prize, or win that fight. So they've already pre-trained themselves to be that new person. Because some people, as you probably discover with your clients, even though they lose loads of weight, they can't get used to being the new person, if that makes sense.
Yeah, big time, which kind of is a perfect little segue, I guess, into our next kind of topics, which is more, I think, nutrition related. And I think one of the big things I wanted to get from you as well is just a bit of the detail, I think, physiologically, how things work maybe, and just give your perspective really. But so I noticed that you in your Instagram bio, you say that you're keto and fasting fan, right? And
Yeah.
I think this is where I think the fitness industry is crazy, right? One day we're like, yeah, fasting is perfect. Next day, a lot of people slag it off. Same thing with keto, same thing with low carb, high fat, whatever. I think at the end of the day, everybody has different needs, and you're going to find something that works for you. Some people are going to really enjoy fasting. Some people really enjoy keto, low carb, high fat. And ultimately, for me, this is just, I just want people to have something that's sustainable, right? And if one of those fits that, great. So I guess if we start with keto, because that's quite a popular one that comes and goes. I guess, give us a bit of explanation of keto, I guess, from your perspective, and we just dive into it.
Yeah, I think it's because there's different flavors of it. Really, what it is, it's like a very low carbohydrate diet. So traditional keto would be sort of 5% carbs and about 70% fat, and then the rest protein. But you can get other variations where it's more kind of 50-50 ish fat to protein, or 45 to 45. For example, the carnivore diet, which is called zero carb. And then you have things like low carb, which can be 50 to 100 grams of carbs a day. But the main reason it's interesting is because it can reduce inflammation and control insulin resistance or insulin sensitivity. And when people decide to change their way of eating, it's usually for a reason. It's usually for weight loss, or it can be for health reasons, or it's for improving performance somehow. So for people who are not sure about the biochemistry of carbohydrates, I won't go into massive detail, but insulin is a hormone that gets produced when you eat carbohydrates because the blood sugar goes up, and you need insulin to come out to push the sugar into the cells, which can be the liver, the muscle cells, or the fat cells. And insulin is a growth and storage hormone. We can't live without it because you'd be a type 1 diabetic. But on the other hand, when it comes to insulin levels, you don't want insulin high all the time. So either that would be from eating carbohydrates a lot through the day, or eating a huge amount, and then you've got insulin high all the time, and your body can start to become insulin resistant. And then that leads to a whole host of other metabolic problems, like end stage would be type 2 diabetes, but on the way you can get cardiovascular disease, inflammation, dementia, polycystic ovaries. So the idea of a low carb diet, keto or carnivore, would be to take away the carbs. That means the levels of insulin will be lower in the body, and the body will start to become more sensitive to insulin again. When it comes to weight loss, the common denominator in people who've got problems with their weight long term is always insulin resistance or high insulin levels. So I'd say the main reason, or the main, say, USP of the keto diet is to manage insulin, and then that'll also manage inflammation. When you take away the insulin, the body will shift out of carbohydrate burning mode into fat burning mode and make ketones, which are like little bits of broken up fat. And that's why it's called the keto diet, because you're making these ketones. But there are other ways to go into ketosis, such as exercise or fasting. It's just when the body or the liver's run out of glycogen, which is its own sugar store, and there's about 2,000 calories worth of sugar stored in the liver, it'll then start to dip into burning fat. So that would be the main reason people would choose to do keto. But now, like you say, there are so many different flavors of keto and different variations, different opinions. It's sort of gone a bit faddy. And the other problem with keto is if you just ate proper food and stayed away from processed things, it would work. But because it's become commercialized, we've got keto candy, keto cakes, all of this keto processed food. Because in a way, the reason it does work as well, it's very simple. You just don't eat carbs and you count. And people should be able to grasp that concept. But now the industry's flooded in all of these keto desserts and keto junk. It's sort of commercialized it and made it this buzzword, which now people are eating rubbish all over again, and they're not losing weight, or they're getting inflamed again. Also, the other problem with the traditional keto is because it's so low protein, it wouldn't be compatible with somebody who wants to gain muscle. Whereas something more like the zero carb or carnivore version of keto would be more compatible. But like you say, you answered the question. What I was going to say before is that taking a little bit of everything and putting it together into a program is the ideal approach. And the other thing which is tempting or useful about ketosis is that ketones themselves are an alternative fuel for the brain. So that's why people who want to seek reducing brain fog or more mental clarity would choose a keto diet. But again, some people feel dreadful all the time on a keto diet. So that would be ticking the boxes that people are trying to sort of solve a problem. So people would want to, it can help people lose weight. It can reduce inflammation, which would be sort of things like pain, other diseases, and it can improve performance, I would say more mental clarity. Of course, there are fat adapted athletes as well who do just do keto and carnivore, but in the same way, there are lots of athletes that incorporate carbs, and there'll be athletes who do fasting, and there are athletes who do a little bit of everything depending on their training.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. And I think you mentioned at the very end, a lot of athletes who will probably up their carbs because they're training a lot. And again, that's probably where, when it comes to keto, you just have to try it. And that's what I was going to ask next. If you're somebody who's thought about it and they don't even know where to start, I guess, and maybe you're trying to do it at home, because like you said, it could reduce inflammation, it can help insulin resistance and sensitivity. How would you just kind of go about trying it yourself without maybe getting lost in all these different types that you just kind of talked about? Sorry, I think I got you back, I think.
Yeah, your connection froze about 10 seconds ago.
Oh, okay. I can ask you the question again. I don't know if you heard it.
I think I heard most of it.
Okay. It was just mostly, I was asking about if somebody was interested in going down the keto diet, and, you know, because there's so many different versions, because you talked about a few, how would you go about starting it and, you know, tracking it and I guess get into that state where is it just as easy as getting my Fitness Pal and saying, okay, I'm just going to change my calories. So 30% roughly is going to be protein. And then you said, what, 5% is carbs and the rest is fat? Is that all you would focus on?
Yeah, you could do that. So it would, because it's very simple, that would be the best way to start. Also, if somebody has been eating a lot of carbohydrates, which their body's got used to burning glucose as a fuel, and all of a sudden you're asking the body to switch into using ketones, it's not like a car that's electric or petrol where you can just use one or the other. The body's complicated, and it's got to make all the right enzymes to be able to make ketones, use ketones, get ketones into cells. So you're going to have that window where you're not going to feel great. Also, lots of people are addicted to carbohydrates, and because they don't have them, they're going to have a little bit of bumpiness to get started. There's a thing which people call keto flu. A lot of the time it's just electrolytes out of balance, but sometimes it's just withdrawals. But as you said, you just need to decide, you know, you want to do it and why do you want to do it? So you've got a set goal. Do you want to help with some kind of pain issue or brain fog, or do you want to lose weight? What do you want to do it for? So you're already motivated, so that when it doesn't go quite to plan for the first couple of days, you don't suddenly give up. And to bear in mind that your body is an adaptive organism, and you've asked it to suddenly do something extremely different it's not done before, and stick with it. So I would suggest that. Also, like I said before, not to fall down the trap of keto pancakes and keto chocolate and keto cakes, because another reason the keto diet works really well is because you automatically get rid of all of the snack food and the junk food by accident. Whereas if you're eating kind of keto versions, you're not really training your body to eat proper food.
That makes sense. Have you tried and dabbled in it yourself?
What the keto diet?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I got into it about 5 years ago. And then ever since then, I've sort of modified it, tried the carnivore diet, tried fasting and keto. Now I'm at the stage where I introduce carbs when I need them at the right time, because I think particularly for women, if you try and do keto all the time, the hormones don't particularly like that. So you can run into issues. But there are people that do keto 24/7, 365, and thrive on it. And like you said right at the beginning, if that works for you and you're achieving your goals, then keep doing that. If you're doing keto and every couple of weeks you feel dreadful, particularly for women around the period time, it is okay to sensibly incorporate some carbohydrates, particularly around the time of a workout, because your body's going to use all the glucose during the workout and you'll just go straight back into ketosis again. So there are ways to introduce carbs, and also carbs are important for things like thyroid hormones and leptin levels as well. So I'm not completely 100% keto all the time, because I think it's sensible to take bits of what works and make a regime that's I can stick to or somebody else could stick to.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it comes back to individuality. Like it's like a training program. You're periodizing your program, and it might be that with your nutrition, you're going through a certain amount of time in a keto diet, and then you're introducing carbs, to your
Mm.
point, and then it might be that you come out of keto and you do something completely different. Um, cool, that's good. In terms of fasting then, because this is a big one as well, and again, it comes and goes. A lot of people feel like they need to eat in an 8-hour window. Some people eat in a 1-hour window, 2-hour window. What are some of the benefits in your opinion of fasting? Is it kind of similar in terms of insulin resistance and other aspects, I guess, helping you be in a calorie deficit, things like that?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think fasting is much more interesting biologically than keto diet. So first of all, for a bit of background, our ancestors were completely used to fasting and wouldn't have had food for a couple of days at a time sometimes. And if we got weak and stupid and slow from no food, we'd have died out millions of years ago. So very interesting adaptations happen during fasting. So first of all, one of the main benefits, you're asking about benefits, yes, you've got the insulin sensitivity and improving insulin resistance. We've also got something called autophagy, which is where the body breaks down old and damaged cells and organelles and junk in the body, sort of like spring cleaning. And
Mm-hmm.
like inflammation and insulin resistance, not enough autophagy is linked to lots of diseases as well. So when you don't eat, your body's forced to break down and eat its own junk, really. And that's very important for, particularly as you get older, because you get worse at doing autophagy as you get older. Also, from a biochemical view, when you fast, it switches on something called AMPK, or adenosine monophosphate kinase. So we'll just call this like a metabolic switch. So first of all, this switch will promote fat burning and inhibit fat gain, which is kind of obvious if you're not eating. It'll
Mm-hmm.
also encourage your body to make more mitochondria, which are the things which are in the muscles that make energy. So the more mitochondria you've got, the better. And it'll make new mitochondria, sort of like having loads of brand new Toyota Yaris's in your cell, not a whole load of Ford Capris, which are using loads of fuel and pumping out loads of free radicals. Then you've got the other thing that AMPK does, it tightens junctions, because I know we're talking about the gut later, and leaky guts are a really big problem for people when the gut lining opens a bit and things escape from the gut, like endotoxin or food particles, and then cause allergies or brain fog. So fasting can tighten up the gut lining, but it also can tighten up any leaky barrier, like leaky blood-brain barrier would be a problem for somebody who'd had a brain injury or had leaky barriers in the body, and also leaky liver as well, because obviously the liver is really important for detox. So it does all of that. Also, fasting activates anti-aging genes like sirtuins and FOXO genes. So that would, again, is something appealing for people who are getting a bit older. And that's been studied in lots of different organisms. That's common knowledge.
Okay.
And the other thing that fasting does is it triggers the detox pathway in the body. So that would be NRF2. And your body will naturally start to get rid of the mercury, the arsenic, the plastics, the pesticides, and all of that. So you're encouraging that particular pathway, because the body will remove toxins itself under the right circumstances. So fasting does a lot more than keto, I think. Also, it depends on how long you fast, because say if you did like a 24-hour fast, you'll get some of those benefits. Whereas when you start to do 48 hours, you're going to get lots more autophagy, lots more fat burning, more reduction in inflammation, more time for the gut to heal. When you get to 72 hours, that's when it gets really interesting, because it changes how the immune system behaves. Some of the cells which have been, say, confused and angry and attacking your own body, for example, in autoimmune diseases, all of that can be dampened down in 3 days of fasting. So it's very popular or appealing for people with autoimmune disease like rheumatoid arthritis or ankylosing spondylitis, things like that. So that's the other reason people would get into fasting.
Yeah, sorry, my roommate's a PT as well. She's got clients.
Oh, it's
It's
okay.
all right, don't worry, way. So you literally answered my question, because I was going to ask you about how much time is enough to start getting benefits or results out of it. And I guess one thing you mentioned too is, based on what you said, logically, I guess the older we get, maybe the more we'd want to incorporate fasting into our diet potentially.
Yes, yes, because as first of all, as people get older, they get more insulin resistant and more inflamed. So you want to do something about that somehow.
Mm,
With the fasting, it's say if somebody wanted to do, we'll start off with a little fast like 16/8. That's the commonest one, where they eat in an 8-hour window and fast for 16. You'll
mm,
get the benefits of the fat burning, some autophagy, things like that. Also, when you fast, your growth hormone goes up. Not really in that kind of window. So, but the reason that 16/8 is useful is because you're doing it every day. So it's kind of little and often. So you will accumulate benefits over time if you make that sort of a regular thing.
okay.
Then the other level up would be OMAD, which is 1 meal a day. And that would be where you've got like either a 22-hour fasting window and a 2-hour eating window. So you're just going to get more autophagy, more fat burning than you would in 16 hours. And you can still, on both of those regimes, gain muscle, things like that. It's not going to be one of those situations where your body stays as it is, because that's what puts people off fasting. Lots of people are afraid of losing muscle, but I'll come into that in a moment.
Mm,
When you then get into 48s and 72s, that's when things get really different. So as I said before, the 72-hour one, that's when you can reset the immune system. The gut will have healed by then, because you've got the cells take 3 days to turn over. So you've got a brand new gut lining. Also in 3 days, it can make changes to the dopamine system, so people can overcome addictions, not just food addictions, but other things as well, like prescription medication. And then when you get to 5 days, that's when you can get stem cells to release. So they would be special cells in the body that can turn into anything and say regrow sort of particular structures in the body, which is obviously very desirable. And I would say anything after 6 to 7 days is laws of diminishing returns, because hormonal changes happen during fasting, and some are helpful and some are not. So one of the helpful ones, like I said, growth hormone goes up. So that's going to preserve the muscle. T3, which is the active hormone, goes down, which is fine for a little while. That's again to preserve muscle. But cortisol and noradrenaline go up. So people feel more awake and alert, but it affects their sleep. And
mm.
which doesn't really start to kick in till about day 3 or 4. But then sleep's so valuable. Is it really worth trying to fast for 10 days and just have like insomnia for a week, when, you know, you could get really good benefits from just doing 1 3-day fast every 3 months?
Mm.
Or you could do a 48-hour fast every 2 weeks or every week, or doing OMAD for 5 days a week, or doing intermittent fasting or restricted feeding, the 16/8 all the time. Because it's all about making sure that the benefits, you're still getting the benefits of what you want, just without sort of making things harmful and stressful on the body. And it's
Yes.
not sustainable to do a 72-hour fast every week, unless you're, say, it's really good for people who are really overweight, because they can get the same results of doing, say, a 48-hour fast, have a meal, 48-hour fast meal for ages until they lose weight, and they get the same results as a gastric band without, or of having gastric bands and gastric surgery. So
Mm.
that's a totally different category of person, where a different style of more aggressive fasting would work, because you
Okay.
get results so quickly. Whereas, say, for me or you, doing that kind of fasting would cause more stress and more trouble than it was worth. So we would want to fast so it becomes beneficial without becoming stressful. And particularly for men and muscle, if it's starting to make them lose muscle, they're not going to want to fast, because it's not going to be compatible with their goals. Whereas if somebody's got an illness, say an autoimmune disease, they're very willing to fast, often for 3 days, to not have their symptoms. Or if someone's tormented by gut issues and the only thing that's helping them is doing fasting regularly, they're going to be motivated to do it. So that's how I would view the different lengths of fasts.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. And I had a few questions. So first one, I know because you're dropping a lot of really good kind of knowledge bombs, I like to call them. if people want to read up on this, I guess, where do you kind of find this research or evidence-based kind of research?
Oh, right. Okay. There's a person on the internet called Sim Land. He's an Estonian guy, and all he does is make videos about fasting. And he reads all those scientific research, and he's written several books on fasting. He's a really young guy, very sensible, always gives you the information, and he's pretty much done it all for you. So if somebody was interested, it would be worth listening to what he has to say, because he's very active on YouTube, and he's very knowledgeable, and he's very thorough, and he doesn't have extreme opinions. He just gives the information and talks about the context. And he looks good. He trains. He's a young guy, you know, muscular, not huge, but I would say he's a very good person to learn from, because it's not his opinions. He's just collating scientific research. Jason Fung, Dr. Jason Fung has written books on fasting as well. He knows a lot about it.
Cool. That's good. I think it's just good to mention that, you know, there is evidence out there that you can go read, and you can make your own opinions as well, because some people will probably 100% agree, and some people will still kind of be maybe a bit skeptical. So go read the stuff, and then you can make your own opinions too. I think in terms of the muscle mass, I actually read a study not long ago, and I should have wrote it down, but they looked at a 16-8 window. And it really did impact muscle mass at all, especially if they were eating around their workouts. One of the big things that was in the study was, as long as you're in a fed state before the workout, it seems to preserve, or at least kind of like improve your results, rather than potentially increasing the length of time of the fast. And I'm sure that probably varied based on the individual and their diet and the rest. So in terms of, I guess, just to dive into that further, if I was someone who's doing like a very long fast and I'm still trying to train.
I wouldn't advise that. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I would say if you want to do a long one, because I once did a 7-day fast. I did it last year for charity, and I did things like Pilates and walking, but I wouldn't have done gymnastics or powerlifting, because it's just not the right, you're not in the right sort of energy state for those kind of activities, and it would be unpleasant, and your body it breaks down obviously all the old and damaged tissue and cells and things to use as fuel. But there's only so much junk you'll have in the body. And also your body can make all its own glucose that it wants by gluconeogenesis, but it's slow. So it just wouldn't be compatible with that kind of sport. But you can still potter about and walk and swim and do the more sort of aerobic kind of exercises, just because you need to keep occupied if you wanted to do a long fast, because it's very much a mental challenge as well. That's another reason people do fasting, because it's like hormesis, you know, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and fasting does stress the body and mind a bit, and it does help people to get through mental problems as well. So it's not just about food. That's why I'm much more keen on fasting than I am on keto. I think it's got a lot more benefits. It's not just about not eating, and also it appears in pretty much all religious cultures, and there's spiritual side. Buddhist monks fast a lot, and we are very well adapted to fasting because of our ancestry. So it's nothing dangerous. It's just whether you can do it or not, and deciding what do I want to achieve, and planning as well to make sure you're not going to get disturbed if you wanted to do a long fast.
Yeah, definitely. And I had a client 3-4 years ago. He was French, he's Canadian, so that's kind of why I became a client, because I'm French Canadian. And I remember him telling me a story of, he did a 3-day fast at his friend's mom's place, because she did it every year. And he said the amount, like, again, I won't go into the detail of the story, but he said the benefits were just unbelievable. And he told me a few things that happened. I was like, really? He was like, yeah, like, why would I lie about it? I was like, makes sense. And I think it's one of those things that, again, I don't think we can really, it's not something that's been studied probably like extensively from, you know, for 7-day fasts with like a group of people compared to a control group, from what I know.
Yeah, I think it's against human ethics, because it would be like defying the laws of keeping of human rights, because you're denying them food. So I think that's the reason. You've got to go on empirical data, or sort of anecdotal data as well, and stories on the internet. And yes, people do exaggerate a bit. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And of
But
course, there are always people that are very meticulous with their bloods and their readings, and you can see all of their results before and after fasting. So there's obviously all of that data as well. It's just not an actual study.
The last question I had on that is, for those that are fasting, and regardless of the window, this is where I think some people might get it wrong at times. I thought I'd get your opinion. So if I'm trying to lose weight, if I'm someone who's quite obese, I'm quite overweight, and I've started fasting, wasn't really kind of too bothered about my calorie intake during my window of eating, and at a certain point I hit a wall, right? What are the, like, why is that? Is it because you think they're not eating enough? Is it because they're just expecting fasting to just work its magic? Are we still supposed to maybe look at our calories in and be around a maintenance level or in a deficit? Like, do those rules still apply with
Oh yeah,
those?
definitely.
Mm,
Yeah, I would definitely say that it's all back to people try and say, oh, it's not calories don't matter. They still do. Is they're not. It's very variable. I mean, people have got different metabolisms, and you can't just say everybody needs 2,000 calories a day, but really they do matter, because it's just thermodynamics about energy going in and going out. So yeah, exactly. If it's not working, you can either increase the fasting window. Say if someone was very overweight, they were just doing one meal a day, it would be worth getting them to do a 48-hour fast and then one meal, because they've got a nice long run of just pure fat burning for that period of time. And a lot of the time with insulin resistance or very obese people, it's like at home, they're having a fridge and having a deep freezer. They're always going into the fridge, which is their glucose or sugar stores, or eating themselves. And their fat stores have almost become invisible to the body, like the deep freeze. You never go down there unless you really want something. It's about getting their bodies to learn how to use body fat again. Also, once their body is starting to use body fat, the metabolism doesn't seem to crash as much as it does with calorie restriction, say when someone's fasting, because the body's now seen this huge store of fat. So it's having breakfast and lunch from the body fat, and it's perfectly happy with that. It's fed, then the person eats. So you don't get these problems with the metabolism going down and down and down and down, and the person eating less and less and less and less, like you would with calorie restriction. So there is a slight difference. So I would say for an obese person, it's not working. Extend the fasting time rather than reduce the calories in the eating window, if that
got
makes
you.
sense.
Yeah. Would you also look at potentially how many calories they're eating in that window? Like,
Yeah,
let's say an extreme
definitely.
example is, let's say my weight, I'm about 88 kilos and I'm eating about maintenance right now, which is about 2,700 calories.
Yeah,
But if I was doing my fasting and I was only eating like 1,200, and then I'm wondering why I'm not losing weight, then you'd probably have a look at that and say, well, you could potentially eat more rather than
yeah,
just thinking it's the fasting that's going to solve all the problems.
yeah. Yeah, that's a difficult one. You'd have to work individually with the person. Um, but yeah, I wouldn't, I'd have to think about that one a bit more. But yeah, the calories do matter, definitely. And
Hmm.
also when you do, say if somebody's doing an eating window, because some people might do no breakfast, no lunch, and have dinner. What I would do first of all would be swap the window around. So they have breakfast and then they have no lunch, no dinner, go to bed. And that usually, I'd do that first rather than trying to change the calories, if that makes sense, if it wasn't
Okay.
working. Because like the more, sometimes when you really restrict people's calories, you end up with problems as well. And it is better sometimes just to take the food away completely, or switch the eating windows around so they have the eating window in a different place, because that's all brand new to the body then.
Got you. Cool. So
Did
just
that
kind
answer
of,
the question properly? Because I'm not sure if I answered exactly what you were getting at.
yeah, no, it did. And I kind of I re-asked you the question. I was basically just trying to come around to, because I've had clients, I've had old clients that are currently fasting, and I think they hit a bit of a wall. And when I looked at their calories, it might have been that they were eating actually very, very, like, they just weren't eating enough, in my opinion,
Yeah,
in
yeah,
their window. And I thought, okay, well, let's just try to maybe regulate your body, your metabolism a little bit, see what maintenance actually is now, because maybe they never took a diet break or whatever it was. So I thought I'd get your opinion on, do calories actually matter in those windows? Can you just eat 500 calories and just keep like basically manipulating your fasting and just hope that you're always going to lose weight, as an extreme example?
um Yes, because there are people that do the snake diet, which is just rolling fast with a 500 calorie refeed day. They tend to consistently lose loads and loads and loads of weight. But yes, there is going to be a point where the body just, it has to, because you have to get used to being a new weight as well, the body weight set point. And sometimes, like you say, you've got to stop someone somewhere and then maybe let them have a break from it. Like I was saying with keto, if you keep doing it and don't have a break, sometimes you can end up in a little bit of a metabolic mess. And sometimes the same with fasting. If it all of a sudden stops working, it might mean the person does need, like you were saying, a refeed or a break from it, because that'll help with leptin and thyroid hormones, and then restart again. So you'd keep them at maybe maintenance or let them go up a little bit and then start again. And it usually, the weight comes off again, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's pretty much exactly what I kind of suggested, because they still enjoyed the fasting. But I mean, I think, just to clarify, I'm not telling people to go out and eat 500 calories a day and do fasting. There's probably people that, I mean, there's probably people that do that based on, that snake diet or whatever it was, snake fasting. But I personally wouldn't be able to do it, and you never know, I might try it one day. But no, I think that makes a lot more sense. And I think it answers the question for anybody out there thinking, do calories matter if I'm fasting, essentially?
Yes, they do. But then I suppose sometimes when you've got a small eating window, physically, you just can't get them in anyway.
Yeah.
And also lots of people, including me, is like eaten, like had a snack or something and completely forgotten about it. Whereas if you're in an eating window, you've got your meal and then that's it, nothing. So it's the secret snackers as well. It's sometimes that's what the problem is as well, that when they really can't have anything, they do realize, oh yes, I was having a grape there and I was having a handful of almonds here, but not counting it. So I think
that's just like any diet.
Yeah, but I think, like you say, with your people who are fasting, just like say if the keto stopped working, just have a break.
Awesome. No, that's great. That's really helpful. And I think
then I suppose it would be back to making sure they have a break in a sensible way, because if they're already addicted to, say, junk food and stuff like that, sometimes if you they get a taste for it again, you could set off the problem you had before. So it would just be breaking the fasting in a sensible way with sort of proper food and some treats, but something that's not going to put them back into their situation where they were overweight.
Got you. Awesome. That's really, really good and really helpful, I think. And I think it kind of will give people different insight on fasting and have a bit more context around it. So no, that was really helpful. Thank you. This is kind of one, and I know you said you have a call later on, so we're going to try and go through.
Don't worry about it, because they know I'm doing something with you, and it was just whenever it's because I was late for you because of my call before, so I'm more than happy. I'm enjoying it.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Glad you enjoyed it. So this one's a personal question, because I don't know if you know, but Canada, like everything, marijuana is legal now. It didn't stop people before, but it's just different. And CBD now is everywhere, and it's kind of like, it's just blowing up. So I think in terms of CBD, and I think you mentioned something about magic mushrooms on your profile.
Yes.
Yeah, and I was just kind of curious to know what your thoughts about it were, especially the CBD, because I've CBD. Sorry, I've taken it. I thought I was sleeping a hell of a lot better when I was taking it. I felt like it really helped inflammation in general. Like my body felt better and everything else. So I guess, like in your opinion, what are your thoughts on it at the moment?
Okay, first of all, cannabis and CBD work completely differently, because in a cannabis plant, you've got THC, CBD, CBG, CBC, and they are kind of separate. So first of all, you need to understand like the endocannabinoid system, that we actually make something called an anandamide and 2-arachidonoglycerol, which is our own cannabinoids. And we've got cannabis receptors in our bodies for those molecules. So we've got CB1 and CB2 receptors, and a receptor is like a lock, and then different things go in the lock. So starting off with, the CB1 receptors are in the brain and the nervous system, and then the CB2 receptors are throughout the body and in the immune system. THC by itself will bind mainly the CB1s, and that's why you'd get high and get the effects of being stoned, and a certain amount of pain relief plus psychological and psychoactive effects. When you hit the CB2 receptors, that's when you get things like modulation of the immune system, other things like that. But the interesting thing about CBD is it doesn't actually bind to either of the CB1 or CB2 receptors. It works by doing something different. So first of all, like you touched on, yes, it's really good for anxiety and sleeping issues because it does something, it calms neuroinflammation in the brain via the glutamate pathway. For people who are really interested. For people who are not interested in the details, it's good for anxiety and stress and calming down. Also, it inhibits NF-kappa beta, which is an inflammation pathway. So yes, CBD will definitely reduce inflammation. And then thirdly, when you eat it, it can stimulate AMPK in the gut locally. So it'll close up and help with gut issues. And as we know, gut issues can create issues all over the body. And also it'll stimulate the detox system quite gently. So the person will remove toxins. And like I said right at the beginning, toxins cause all kinds of mental health and physical problems. So the reason with THC and CBD, I'll go back to the receptors again. When you've got CBD and THC together, the CBD lets the THC, the one that normally makes you high, be able to press or interact with the CB2 receptors, which are all over the body. So in a way, they're kind of three separate drugs if you look at them separately compared to, so say like cannabis with THC and CBD has certain effects, and people with cancer or epilepsy want that. People who've got mental health issues, say schizophrenia or mania, THC is really bad for them. So they need to just stick to the CBD and stay with that. It's reasonably safe. People who want to get high and have experiences like that, they will want something with lots of THC and not very much CBD, like the plants that are grown in Amsterdam.
Yes.
So that's their three separate things depending on what you want. But when you, because a little bit of THC in with your CBD is going to really give it loads of extra oomph. So having something like 1% THC or a bit under, which is legal in this country as well, will make your CBD work better. So that's why going for a broad spectrum one, or adding a tiny little bit of real cannabis or THC to your CBD that you buy is going to make it even better. Because the drawbacks of CBD is it's really commercialized now. So there's plenty of bunk product around where people have mixed it with olive oil. It's not got very good bioavailability, so about 10% or less, so you don't absorb all of it, and it's expensive. So adding that little extra bit of THC or buying a broad spectrum will make your product work better.
I was going to say it's
get
not cheap.
No,
not cheap.
And you can get something called nanoemulsion or liposomal CBD. That's when it's inside like a bubble, and you get about 70% bioavailability there. So that means that you absorb 3/4 of it. Whereas if you just get ordinary CBD that's only, say, at best 10% bioavailable, you're losing nearly 9/10 of it.
Got you. Is there any evidence to suggest that you start getting resistance to the doses?
Yes, definitely. I was just about to come to that. I was going to say that even though CBD, I would say, is safe enough for everybody, including children and very elderly, frail people, it's still a drug and you still need a holiday from it because, like anything, you will develop a tolerance. So you do need to have breaks from it.
Got you. Because I know people that use it and they just like absolutely abuse it all the time. And I'm just like, surely you're not getting anything from this now. It's kind of like coffee. Right, you're not getting the performance enhancement benefit of it. Okay, that's good. And in terms of the potency of it, because I know you can go to like Boots, which for any like North Americans listening, it's like going to Shoppers Drug Mart and stuff like that. What's the percentage you're looking for usually?
Oh,
it's
yeah,
like
that's all
over.
Yeah, I'd say, or 10%, but it depends how it's been labeled, because sometimes it's labeled as 500 milligrams per bottle or 1,000 milligrams per bottle, and then you would take out as much as you would need. But again, it's one of these trial and error things, because everybody's got different sensitivities to different drugs. So you might need 14 milligrams of it to get an effect, and I might need 25. So generally when people are trying CBD, they have a reason or something they want to fix. So you try taking an amount and see if that amount makes your problem get better or go away. If you're necking the whole bottle and still nothing's happening, that's either saying it's not going to work, or you might want to add some THC in there to give your CBD a bit of an oomph. So the reason I tell people about the THC is because I hate seeing people getting ripped off, and CBD is really expensive, and the people that really benefit from it or need it aren't the most wealthy. And for a very small cost, they could easily get hold of a tiny amount of THC, add that, and it's going to massively improve how well their CBD works for them. And yes, fair enough, it's not completely legal, but I don't think ripping off ill people or people in pain is ethical either.
Yeah, 100%. If it can help, like, and that's why I'm so surprised how expensive it is, because everyone's making it. You'd think somebody would have gone a little bit lower and still make a quality product, but just one of those things, I guess.
Yeah, I did read about it, because no matter how you do it, it's still an expensive product. So I suppose it's all, you've got to grow the plants, you've got to extract the CBD. It's like a process, because it's a very complicated molecule. You can't just synthesize it in a factory, and you've got to separate it away from the THC, because if you accidentally get over 1% of THC, it doesn't pass the tests and the batch is useless, and then it becomes not legal. So it's quite and there are other things in cannabis plants. There's like about probably over 150 other compounds, and you've got to separate the CBD out from all of those. So it just becomes an expensive process.
Yeah, it makes sense. Time is money, I guess, for companies, right? So,
yes.
Cool. What about mushrooms now? Because this is an interesting one.
Yeah, mushrooms are amazing, because we're more closely related to mushrooms than we are plants. So it would make sense that mushroom medicine is better, more compatible with our biochemistry. So I assume we're talking about psilocybin making mushrooms, not other medicinal mushrooms. So the actual magic variety.
Yeah, defo. Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned plants, because I was listening to Joe Rogan podcast a few days ago, and I don't know if this is real or not, so you might know, but it was, it's kind of a tangent, but basically they showed that if you played music around your plants, that plants grew bigger in biomass compared to plants that didn't. And I was that surely can't be a thing, but
I don't know. I'm sure it's one of those things. If you're nice to your plants, like if you're nice to your biochemistry experiments, they work better. So I'm not sure. No one's ever proved it, but it wouldn't surprise me that there's more to plants and mushrooms than we think. They don't just sit there. That they are more complicated than we think. But I don't know. I'd have to. Do they have a preference to music? Do you have to play the meatloaf?
I don't know. I think it was like classical music, and I was like, might as well. Beethoven probably solves everyone's problems, right? So, but yeah, if we look at the mushrooms then, and again, because I don't really know a whole bunch about this section, and obviously you know a little bit more. I think. So take it away.
Yeah, so the mushrooms are really interesting, because there's about over 100 species of magic mushroom in the world, and the UK one's the Liberty Cap, and it grows around winter time. There are all kinds of other ones, and they've been involved in our culture for thousands and thousands of years. The Israelites were like known to use them. They used to grow a lot around Mount Sinai, and in shamanic cultures and things like that, they've been used for thousands of years for medicinal purposes and for spiritual enhancement. So I'm saying that our bodies are kind of quite used to this compound. It's nothing brand new, whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. And the thing about the psilocybin is it's if you like Joe Rogan, you'll know that Joe Rogan's obsessed with DMT, which is dimethyltryptamine, probably the most hallucinogenic compound there is, which we do actually make naturally. Psilocybin is sort of like an oral version of that, because you can take the mushrooms orally, and the psilocybin is 4-hydroxy-DMT, and it doesn't get broken down so quickly. So the effects are going to be, say, 4 to 6 hours. So we'll start off by saying, say if somebody took a large dose of mushrooms, that would be for psychedelic purposes, spiritual enhancement, having trips, things like that. which can be of massive value if you do it under a situation of psychotherapy as well. So it's almost like using the mushrooms as a hypnotist. So you're putting the person into an altered state and then doing psychotherapy with them to help them through a problem or an addiction or some difficult time in their life, but combining it with psychotherapy. And there's studies on this. There is research here. So that in that particular context of using them in quite a high dose, it's very helpful for addiction, particularly alcohol, cigarettes and food. But also they've been studied a lot for anxiety and depression, particularly people at the end of their lives with, say, with cancer who are going to die. So it's helping with that kind of depression as well. And that's sometimes used in a high dose, almost the same as somebody would use for sort of going on a trip in a party, except it's in a controlled environment. And then when you get into the smaller or micro doses, that's where you don't get any hallucinations or anything like that. Again, the small micro doses, people have found them beneficial for creativity, food addiction again, cigarettes and alcohol. So they do have a valuable purpose therapeutically. The way they work, just briefly, they work on serotonin A receptors or serotonin A2 receptors. So something different to cannabis, but very similar to things like LSD and DMT as well. For people that don't know, it's a compound made in plants, lots of different plants, and we make it ourselves. And ayahuasca is the thing that's got lots of DMT in it. And again, people use that for sort of life-changing healing effects. So back to the mushrooms, there is lots of data coming out now about the benefits of it for different mental health, but also there is studies showing it can be helpful for pain, including nerve pain. So the reason I think, as you have guessed, I'm really interested in addiction. And a lot of the time, if someone's addicted to something, they'll give them some drug, which they'll just get addicted to that instead. Yeah. Like with pain as well, people get addicted to tramadol or codeine, or they discover kratom and then get addicted to kratom. Whereas the massive benefit of psilocybin, which is in the mushrooms, and psilocin, it's like LSD, it's not addictive. So it's again helping somebody like in one sitting, not having, then don't have to take magic mushrooms every day to have the effect. It's more of a one go at it, or very, very small amounts split over maybe once or twice a week. Definitely not an all the time medicine. And I'd say the drawback of it is on safety levels, it can raise blood pressure a bit, and it could be a little bit harmful for the heart, but it's not meant to be something you take every day. Definitely not, particularly like a big mushroom trip for having a life-changing experience. People might do that once a year. It's not going to do any harm. And with the microdosing, definitely not every day, maybe once or twice a week. So, and again, if you've got high blood pressure or heart problem, then stay away from them, I'd say, just because there's not enough research yet to say whether they're safe or not for that. Other than that, same as the cannabis, if somebody's got psychotic tendencies or schizophrenia, because it is a psychoactive drug, again, best stay away from it.
Yeah, 100%. I think a lot of people are going to be like, what do you mean take a drug to treat a drug? It's like, well, it's natural, really. And when you look at it, like what's any difference for, from you going to a doctor and then prescribing something that's way stronger potentially, or a lot worse for you, that's going to damage your just your gut and God knows what else, right? So it's one of those things, like people sometimes aren't open to those ideas, but then the ones that are maybe get really, really good benefits from it. So,
but also if you think about it, because obesity and smoking are the biggest killers in the country, surely stopping somebody smoking or being obese is worth the risk of a mushroom.
Yeah.
Same as people who are alcoholics. It's one of those things, the amount of damage that causes. And yes, okay, it's not mainstream, but if it's going to stop somebody drinking and really damaging themselves, or eating themselves, or smoking themselves to death, I can't see the problem. And the same with, it's also actually meant to be quite good for some kinds of ADHD and OCD. And if somebody's got something like that, it takes over their lives and it torments them. And when you've got a situation like that, because it's in your head, other people don't really understand. Whereas for those people, if there could be a plant that could help them have a normal life, it's life-changing to them. And the same with people who've got anxiety or depression. Unless you've had that, you don't really understand how horrible it is. And
Yeah.
it's like the fasting. If you go on the internet, there's like thousands, if not millions, of people talking about microdosing and psychedelics and how they've really helped them with their mental health problems. But unlike the fasting, there is lots of research on PubMed and things where they've started to use psychedelics for psychotherapy. But it was done a lot in the 60s anyway, so it's not a new topic. It's just not been legal for about 25 years, but they're considering changing the laws because of the MDMA nearly it's in phase 3 clinical trials for PTSD, which is another horrible condition. And if it gets past that, there'll be a big push to maybe change the law on some of these psychedelics so they don't harm people, and people who really need them can take them in a controlled way with a doctor or with a therapist and get rid of problems that have been tormenting them.
Yeah. And I think that's slowly starting to shift. And I think you're seeing that with, I mean, you know, Canada having legalized marijuana and people now starting to do more research, and you can see the benefits. It's like you said, if you can save hundreds of thousands of people because they're now taking something that actually isn't that bad for you, and there's probably a lot better naturally for your body than maybe a man-made drug, then why wouldn't you? And I think, is it LSD as well? And that this is going way back. Is it LSD that some people they use it to treat like suicide headaches and like really bad migraines?
Oh yes, that's right. And thunderclap headaches, those. Yes, LSD is the best one for that. Some people get some luck with psilocybin or cannabis, but usually it's the LSD that's helpful. But also the other thing about the psychedelics and plants is nobody can own them, so the pharmaceutical companies can't make money out of them, so they don't want people using things like that. The way around that would be is if they were legalized, we'd have to have a tax on them because somebody's got to benefit somewhere.
Yeah.
But then the pharmaceutical companies are so powerful that they're going to be making losses on antidepressants and things like that if people choose to take an unpatentable product. So that's the problem. There's always money involved as well. But I think in Canada, same as Amsterdam, and I think in New Zealand, cannabis is going to become legal. The tax is going to be really heavy. Also, CBD is really heavily taxed. That's another reason it's so expensive.
Yeah, it is. It is. They're making a lot of money on cannabis. I think it's like 30% of demand is met in Canada at the moment, meaning that we just need that much, which is crazy. Last question on mushrooms, because this was one that I used to always get asked or talked about growing up, is mushrooms, are they in theory poisoning your brain when you're taking them? Is that why you're getting like this crazy high psychedelic kind of feeling?
No, it comes back to, because DMT or dimethyltryptamine, we make that ourselves anyway, and nobody's exactly quite sure what it does completely, but it's definitely not something harmful. But people can have hallucinations and make lots of DMT. It comes out of the pineal gland. Sometimes they have it in Kundalini yoga or meditation. So it's a perfectly natural compound we make. Also, when you, not that anyone knows, but apparently when you die, your body and lungs release a huge amount of DMT. Same as when somebody is extremely badly injured, they'll produce loads of DMT, which could be why people have these crazy hallucinations or near-death experiences. And then the psilocybin, like I said, it's basically 4-hydroxy-DMT. So it's just a version that can't be broken down, because DMT itself can easily get broken down in the body by monoamine oxidases, and it's just gone, particularly in the gut. It'll be gone in a minute, whereas the mushroom one is a bit more protected. So no, it doesn't poison your brain. It just binds to serotonin receptors, and it binds to other receptors as well, but the main target is serotonin receptors.
Cool. That answered my question. Thank you. Because I've grown up with that in my head forever, just thinking, oh, well, that poisons you. And it's like, well, no, it doesn't.
The thing is, the interesting thing, the way all this links up, is that people who are really good hypnotic subjects, you can make them have hallucinations without giving them any drugs.
Oh, really?
Because when people are doing stage hypnosis shows and you ask them to see a pink elephant dancing in a tutu, they actually see it. Or you can make them say to them, oh, my head's now invisible, or my body's invisible, you can just see my head, and that's exactly what they see. Or you can tell them that they're in a concert or on a ship or riding a a giant seahorse, and they actually do think they're doing that, and they see all that stuff. So it's really interesting that brain can do that whether you take drugs or not. That's the thing. Like, it's all back to, a lot of it is like, wow, I didn't know the brain could do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we still don't even know, what is it, like 80% of it still, which is crazy. So imagine what we'll know in the next 20 years. Awesome. So last kind of bit I want to talk through, just because again, I'm curious, and I think a lot of people wonder about probiotics. Do you take any? What's your thoughts on them?
What I do is I make kefir. So I'm very naughty. I bought this, the very good quality one, and then what I do is when it's nearly run out, I put more goat's milk in, put it on a heat pad, and just make more kefir again. And I make kombucha as well. So that's a live food, because the issue I have with probiotics is, first of all, from working with bacteria a lot, they don't really like even going in the freezer, and they definitely don't want to be freeze dried into a powder. So first of all, loads of them are going to die when you do that. So you probably end up buying a capsule and half the bacteria are dead. The other thing I don't like about probiotics is that all of the delicate species of the bacteria are probably not going to survive. So the company will say, oh, there's 15 strains in here, whereas really there's probably only about 4, just because the very delicate ones wouldn't survive freeze drying. So another way people get around that is they use something called a spore-forming bacteria, which is like a bacillus species, and it's like the SAS or a Navy SEAL, and that bacteria is very, very tough. So what it'll do is when you eat it, it will be helpful in the beginning, but then it'll take over the gut because it's so tough. And the idea with the gut microbiome is you want a nice community of lots of bacteria, different species, all happily living together, not just like a dictatorship or a rogue state where you've just got one species of bacteria in the gut and not diversity, because all these bacteria do things for us. Like they help process vitamins and minerals, they can make neurotransmitters, and we want a nice big variety. So I think taking probiotics, I wouldn't advise anything from the supermarket, like supermarket kefir or supermarket anything, because it's always bad quality or it's full of sugar. And if you are interested in probiotics, it's better to make your own kombucha or kefir yourself, like a live food, or live sauerkraut. That's got lots of live bacteria in as well. The only drawback for that is people who are sensitive to histamines don't get on very well with fermented food. That's one way to look at it. The other way would be to make sure with your diet that you eat things that the bacteria like as well, because they like things like resistant starches, and include some things that they would like to eat too. So you're eating a bit for them as well as yourself. Then avoiding stuff that the bacteria hate, as in antibiotics. That's going to really disrupt all of the gut microbiome. That thing called carrageenan, which is a thickener that's in sort of some milkshakes and yogurts and stuff, that's really bad for the gut. And also something called titanium dioxide, which is like a white dye that's in paint, but also it's in the casings of chewing gum and to make food look white. That's not great for the gut either. So it would be sort of addressing your gut in three different ways, rather than just taking probiotics, because you might feel a bit better in the beginning with the probiotics, but if you end up with the SAS bacteria, the spore formers, they're going to cause dysbiosis in a different way later.
Okay, because I think I went through a phase where I tried it and it didn't really sit well with me. It was really strange. I have really sensitive skin, and so I can pick up rashes and stuff, like just random things that I just don't know where they come from. And I remember when I took probiotics and my rashes started coming out. It was really strange.
Oh yeah. No, like I was saying right at the beginning, that really the gut microbiome is also the mouth microbiome and the 2 or 3 exits microbiome, depending if you're a man or a woman. So the whole lot is all sort of private bits, gut and mouth. That's the whole thing. But because things from the gut can easily get into the bloodstream, if you disturb the gut, then you can interfere with what's in your blood. But again, there's also the gut brain link as well. So doing something really simple like taking a prebiotic that your body doesn't agree with. Could have anything from like a rash, like you said, to weird moods or all sorts. And it's, I think you're a bit like me, that I'll try something, see what happens, and if it works, great. If it doesn't, then I'll look into it. But I'm open to trying things, because yes, of course, I've tried probiotics as well, and I didn't know in the beginning. I thought I was just helping myself.
Yeah, 100%. And that's kind of why I did, because I was thinking a lot of people were talking about gut health. And I was like, okay, let's give it a try. And then literally within the first 3-4 days, I was like, showed my missus, I was like, I didn't have a rash here the other day. It was like on my foot or something. And I was just like, no, I'm not taking this anymore. Like, fuck that, basically.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But
But
also,
in terms
it might have been, sometimes they're very naughty. Anything in a capsule, they put fillers and all sorts in there and don't tell you on the label. And some people are allergic to whatever's in the casing. So it could have been, it was just a poor quality product. It could have been the bacteria or the fillers that were in there as well. But it's just not a very natural way to take a live organism, like freeze dried in a capsule. It is better to explore live versions, sort of with different kefas and kombuchas, and making your own live food, or just looking after the gut microbiome in other ways, like feeding the bacteria and avoiding things that are going to harm or kill them.
I was just going to ask, so I think for anybody out there who's maybe a little bit, I don't know, they're interested, they want to potentially improve gut health, and maybe they don't know how to make the stuff that you're making, would you recommend just keeping a bit of a food diary, documenting what's kind of not working, what doesn't make you feel great, maybe even doing off the back what you said about fasting, is like do a 2-3 day fast?
Exactly. That's the ultimate elimination diet. The problem with gut issues are that they don't sometimes appear exactly the day after you ate the food, that you can eat the culprit and 3 days later out comes the problem, and you blame what you just ate when it was actually something you ate 2 or 3 days ago. That's the problem with things like that. But there's always the usual culprits with gut, like gluten, and sometimes it's nuts or certain plants. That can upset some people's guts because they're a bit allergenic. But definitely I would say make a food diary, because sometimes someone can just look, like I could look straight at something and say, I know those 6 things are allergenic, maybe it's one of those, and you can take them away one at a time, which is very frustrating. But it is better to do an elimination diet, reintroduce the culprits one at a time and see which one it is. It's better that way, because you take away the food. How we say, if someone went carnivore as well, that people use that for gut healing if they can't fast, and then gradually reintroduce things, because you'll cure the problem, feel what it's like to feel normal, and then you can pinpoint exactly which food it was. Whereas if you try and take the food out, it could take weeks or months, and you've still got these gut issues.
Yeah, defo. No, that's really good. I think, again, if you can make your, what would you call it? What you made? Kefa, yeah.
Yeah.
Is
The thing
it
is,
pretty straightforward to make? Pretty
yes,
easy?
it's really, really, really easy. That what you do is you buy a good quality kefir from a health food shop or online. And then when you've nearly finished, because it's sort of just fermented milk, and this was a goat's milk one, I bought some goat's milk from the supermarket, put it back in. Because it's alive, the culture will then just ferment the goat's milk, and you can put it somewhere warm, like not too near the radiator, but maybe in an airing cupboard or somewhere like that. Or now the weather's a bit better, or it was a bit better, you could just leave it out and it'll ferment, and you can then make your own probiotic drink.
Cool. Might have to give that a go. My missus is gonna be like, "What are you doing?" Like, don't worry about it. You probably don't want it anyways.
Oh no, she might. You never know. She might like it.
Yeah, she might. Does it taste okay? Is it?
It's an acquired taste.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's definitely not something you taste the first time. You're like, "Oh, that's amazing," or maybe it is, depending on who you are.
Yeah, no, it is quite nice. It's not horrible at all. You just get used to it, but also you only need a really small amount. So it's a bit like wheat grass juice. It's not that nice, but it's only a little bit. So, and if it's going to help and do something, and it's quite cheap, and you can have an indefinite supply of it, then, and it's benefiting, it is worth doing.
Awesome. And then last kind of point I want to touch on, because again, I saw that you're big into like functional detoxes. And when people hear detoxes, especially in the fitness industry, when you're PT or you're a coach, you automatically kind of like get your back up and you're like, what are you talking about? Why are you doing a detox? Why are you doing that? Because there's just so many out there that just, again, aren't sustainable. They, it's yo-yo dieting and all the rest. Give me an example of kind of like a functional detox that you do with people and what that looks like,
Oh,
if that's all
okay.
right.
Okay, so what you would do is, I'll just use mercury as an example, or heavy metals. So you'd need to buy a product that's going to stimulate the liver to make bile, because you need that to help put move the toxins out of the blood and into the gut. So you need, first of all, a healthy gut for a detox and a healthy liver. So I wouldn't even start one if you've got a gut problem or a liver issue. Then you can use things like alpha lipoic acid and stuff like that to actually push the toxins out of the cells, because they go through a biochemical process, phase 1 to 4 detox all the time anyway, but you can hurry all of that up. Then you'd get your mercury or your toxins to come out of the cells into the blood. They'll go into the liver, and if that's working well, the toxins will get mixed with the bile. You also want things to conjugate to the toxins, like glutathione, like a policeman that arrests it and makes it safe to transport. Then the bile gets dumped in the gut, and you'd put something like activated charcoal or clay or IMD in the gut, so it's ready to bind the mercury and the other toxins, and then you poo them out. And that whole process takes about 40 minutes. And you just would do it once or twice a day. And it's called a push catch. So you need something to get the toxins to come out quicker. And then you need something to catch it, which would be binders. And you can use things like zeolites and clay, activated charcoal. And that's a kind of quite a controlled way, because you know, as soon as you've taken the alpha lipoic acid or whatever in a liposomal form, which works very quickly, it's going to be about 20 to 25 minutes time. The toxins will hopefully land in the gut. So you have your binders ready, and then they get pooed out. And that's the way you're meant to detox. It's meant to come out mainly in the poo. Or and on top of that, you would add on saunas, because you can sweat out a lot of toxins as well. And back to fasting, saunas a very good partner to fasting, because it encourages autophagy. And also, if you fasted at the same time as doing a push catch, it would happen even quicker. So it doesn't have to be anything complicated or laborious. You could just do it for 4 days, have 4 days off, and then start again. Because if you've got lots of, say, mercury, you've built it up over 10 years, it's not going to come out in a week. So it would be something that you would do over a couple of months. And because it's really quite easy, you just carry on with all the rest of your daily life. You just do your push catch, say, in the morning, and it's done in 40 minutes. And then you don't do another one till the next morning. So it's something that people massively overcomplicate.
What are the most common ones? So you said mercury. So what's the benefits of pushing that out?
Yeah, mercury winds up the sympathetic nervous system, so it creates insomnia and anxiety, which is really common. People get mercury from tuna. It's quite a lot in there, and people like eating tuna, and also black fillings. So people tend to have a mercury problem. Also, mercury interferes with the thyroid, so it blocks T4 into T3. So you end up with inactive or not being able to make active thyroid hormone. So it's going to obviously cause a slow metabolism and weight issues. That sort of mild mercury toxicity. Quite severe would be neurological problems and things like that.
Awesome.
And and also when you mess up and also mitochondria hate heavy metals, so you're going to get your things like chronic fatigue and tiredness and stuff like that. So I'd say the metals are the worst ones, like lead, arsenic, and mercury. Loads of research on what they do, but then we've got all kinds of things like plastics and stuff which cause hormone disruption, and fire retardants do as well. And then there's obviously pesticides too on vegetables, and they'll even sneak in organic vegetables. So it's more of a something we can't avoid toxins. It's not a woo-woo thing. Drinking green smoothies all the time probably would make you more toxic. Actually, that's not the way to do it. And it's one of these things that not many people really understand it, and they think they have to eat like 6 apples a day and drink all this weird juice for 10 days, whereas you can actually do it a totally different way, the way I was describing with the push catch, and it just integrates with your daily life.
Yeah, that's actually really, really interesting. I think that's one thing you pointed out. A lot of people probably don't realize is you're always absorbing different chemicals, different toxins from things that you might not even know you're doing. And I mean, if you look at it really, think about the virus that's going on in the world.
Yeah.
like think about how that's being transmitted. We don't really even know that well, do we? And it's like,
Yeah.
well, that applies to everything in life. It applies to bacteria, applies to toxins. Like it's just everything's always like in contact essentially with your.
Yeah, and there's so much plastic around, and people who are very good with their meal planning and it's all laid out, like all week in their plastic pots. I always worry a bit about all the plastic leaching into the food, and even though in what it is, it's because it's small amounts that build up over a long period of time, and the body, like I said earlier, automatically does remove toxins. It's just when it can't deal with them anymore and you start to get symptoms. And the problem with toxin symptoms are they just look like loads of other things. So people would blame insomnia or anxiety on something else, like a relationship, or feeling tired, they'd blame food or something else. Whereas they're basically things that shouldn't be there that make our biochemistry less efficient. And it doesn't do any harm whatsoever to get rid of them. You're not going to get worse by doing a detox properly using correct products.
Okay, that's really good to know. So
expensive either.
yeah, so get glass Tupperware.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and also it is like I used to have a plastic thing for making coffee, but now I've changed to a glass one, and it's, and then obviously with tins and stuff, because I mean, some tin food's really useful, like tinned salmon's brilliant because it's wild salmon. So I always add a bit of, it's called ortho silicic acid that binds to aluminium, and it's just something, again, you could pick it up out of your saucepan, or lots of people like cans and things, which is fine. It's just, it just builds up over time and it will interfere with your body. And we all want to perform better, think better, not be tired, not be depressed and things like that. And it's just an extra sort of thing to help with feeling better, I think. And obviously for some people, when they're really toxic, it is the cause of their sort of chronic fatigue or their fibromyalgia. And definitely if someone's got fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue, it is worth looking down the toxin route, because something down, everyone's going to have toxins in them, and they just might be more sensitive to them than me or you. We might have the same amount of them, but that person's very sensitive and they've got these horrible symptoms that nobody seems to be able to treat. And it's not common medical practice in the West to think about toxins as being a problem, particularly mercury, because obviously with all the black fillings that were put in, we know now that mercury is bad, but we have to keep things a bit quiet from the public because they get a bit upset about it.
Yeah, no, I think that, I mean, just that last section of talking about toxins kind of made me think quite a bit, actually, because there's things like
Actually,
you said,
tuna's got way more mercury in it than black fillings and vaccines. So, and again, with the vaccines, we could go on for ages about that, but the amount of mercury in that's insignificant. It's more the tuna and fish, just they can't help it. The fish that grow very big, like sharks and swordfish, have loads and loads and loads of mercury in them, because Tony Robbins had dreadful mercury poisoning from eating too much swordfish, and he did the quicksilver detox. So it's like genuinely anybody can get toxicity, and he was eating swordfish and tuna thinking he was being healthy, same as lots of other people do.
That's interesting. Definitely something I'm going to keep my eye out for and just kind of do a bit more reading on, because it just makes you think. It makes you think, because you wouldn't normally talk about that kind of thing, would you?
No.
With people just in general, and you wouldn't talk about it with your doctor, and you definitely wouldn't talk about it with your coach, your personal trainer. So
exactly. And also in loads of supplements, whether they're legal or illegal, if somebody's using illegal supplements, they've been produced in labs, and lots of biochemical reactions need metals as catalysts. And then people are taking or injecting things and knowingly taking in heavy metals. But the same as with making supplements, they're still biochemical reactions, and you can end up with heavy metals and things even in a really sort of illegal, ordinary supplement by accident.
Cool. That was really good, really beneficial, really helpful. So thank you for that. So that pretty much wraps up most of the topics, the questions and things. So once again, Sarah, thank you for just kind of diving into the detail, but not too much. I think I was just perfect. For anybody out there that wasn't, that obviously maybe doesn't know as much as you, and I definitely don't know as much as you. So it was just nice.
I don't know as much as you about training. It's like a different thing that you know way more than me about actual workouts and training and stuff like that. So it's just been really nice to talk to you. It's been fun. It's like having a conversation.
Yeah, no, definitely appreciate that. So we always finish up with a bit of a quick fire round, and some of these questions are gonna have nothing to do with training potentially.
Or we're going
Um,
to ask which football team do I support and stuff like that.
nah, not about football. More just kind of like random stuff. So I guess what's your go-to meal? What's your go-to meal?
I'd say eggs and steak.
Oh yeah, nice,
Yeah.
nice. What do you put on the steak? Any sauces?
Occasionally a bit of garlic, a bit of salt. Yes.
Okay. I had a chef. I did a podcast with a chef yesterday.
Oh yes, that would, yeah.
Award-winning chef. He's from Leeds actually, and he said butter, thyme or however you pronounce it, because everyone's different, and garlic on your steak. He says it's
Oh
just to
yes,
die for.
yes, yeah. The time. I'll have to get some of that. Yes.
Yeah. So try that next time. Okay. Just because you mentioned it earlier, and I thought I'll throw it in. Vaccines, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. We'll keep that for a different topic another
Yes.
day. Where's your go-to holiday destination?
New Zealand.
How come?
My mother's a New Zealander.
Oh, cool. It's on my list. It's on my list.
Yes, you must go.
Yeah, they're doing really well, I think, coronavirus, aren't they? I don't think they've
Yes,
been,
yeah, they'd shut their borders really early, so they're coming out of lockdown now.
okay, cool. Where's the first place you're going to go to for a meal once all this lockdown stuff's over?
Ooh, the Drum and Monkey in Harrogate. It's like a fish restaurant.
Okay, nice. I've never been there. There's some really good restaurants in Harrogate, though. What's your go-to pair of casual shoes?
Um, the Vibrams, the five finger ones.
Yeah,
I can
yeah, yeah,
keep
yeah.
it in my own house. I've got Vibrams without the toe things as well, so I'd say Vibrams. Yeah,
Nice. Do you use them pretty much for like everything you can?
yeah. Well, I don't go jogging because I don't think you should really jog in them. But I think they're great for everything else. I don't do Olympic lifting them because I've got tight ankles, so I need a bit of a heel lift. But other than that, they're great for pottering around.
Yeah, actually, I think I don't know if it was Vibrams. I know you call them differently than I do, so that's funny. But I know when they first came out, I don't know if it was them or it was a different company. They didn't mention that like it would cause potentially a lot of
Oh
just wear
yeah,
and tear because it's like stress fractures because you're going from having a cushion on your shoe
yeah,
to having none.
exactly.
And I think a lot of
Yeah, yeah.
people sued them basically. I think they lost a bit of money.
Yeah, but
Uh,
it's a no-brainer really. If you've worn shoes for the past 40 years and you go running in a barefoot shoe, it's like you might as well run outside and see what happens. But yeah.
Nice. And then just curious, if you had to, I guess, encourage people to eliminate something out of their diet because you don't think it's very beneficial, it's probably mercury, but what would it be?
Oh, sugar, I think, I'm afraid.
Cool. Just kind of like all forms of sugar.
Y- Uh, well, no, I just say sugar, like sucrose, table sugar. I mean, fruit, people can have that.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Awesome. So yeah, those are kind of my quick fire questions. But listen, just to kind of round it up, a little bit of an outro. Massive thank you to Sara Pugh for coming on. Just to recap, Sara is she has a PhD in molecular mechanism. She's a hypnotist. She's a Pilates instructor. She's got a Bachelor of Science in genetics and biochemistry. Am I leaving anything out? Is that
No, no,
most of
no, no, that's it. Yes.
perfect? So definitely check Sara out. Sara, where can people find you on social media?
It's busy superhuman. So busy underscore superhuman for Instagram and then just busy superhuman on YouTube or Facebook.
Perfect. So, guys, hopefully this has been a really good podcast. It was full of information. I'm actually really happy with it because I wasn't sure where you're going to go with a lot of the keto and fasting stuff. And I think it was
Yeah.
actually pretty much spot on. Like it was very informative, but it was also very much, it's what works for you,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
which was quite cool to hear. And it doesn't mean you would have been wrong otherwise, but it's just different people's opinions, right? And then lastly, as always, I'm Dan Q. And if you want to find me, you can check me out at Abante Performance, pretty much all the same platforms as Sara. Sara, I'm just going to stop this podcast. Thanks again.
Thank you very much for
And
having me. I've really enjoyed it.